How did the research go these last couple of days?
That's my brother and my nieces.
You found something?
No.
Okay. Anybody struggle with finding a reference? You did a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you eventually find something?
I mean, I have, yeah, like some things. I just wasn't sure like exactly kind of where it was. Because I'm not like, I'm in like, know exactly which way I'm going.
Okay, so you're still narrowing down your topic. Okay, that's why we go through this, we go back and forth with this process, reading things about a topic that we're learning about, and then narrowing it down and going back and forth. Okay, so first of all, what we'll do is I want to lecture and show you a few things about references. We're going to do this the easy way first, and then we have the hard way, which I'm not sure if we're going to get to that today. We might. Sometimes I'll check and see how you feel. If you're getting exhausted on a topic, I'll switch topics just so that you're able to absorb things in an efficient way. So first, in our class, if you go to the very first section, the very first modules, which focus on our first assignments, weeks 2 through 6, if you select the draft, something I'd like you to do right now, we're just at this very first stage where it says outline template. This is the template that you use in our class throughout all projects. So I have everything all formatted in a way that makes sense for you, and really it's just you're filling in your information, deleting my information, filling in your information. So for those of you that have a computer for Macs, you want to open up your Word document after you download this and open it up through Word. So that's the one tricky thing about Macs is they'll try and open it up in a text edit format, which changes the entire format. So let's see, one Mac, is that another Mac over there I see? Any? No? Okay, so, all right, just you. So go through Microsoft. Don't worry about that, just open up your Microsoft. And then open that up through the download button. Okay, once you download this template, I think we're all doing it at the same time. There we go.
Where do you find that? I don't. In the modules, this one's 2, 6, other draft outline.
Thank you. So here's the link, and then it says draft outline, and you just download that. Okay, if you do have your computers, it's not a bad idea to go ahead and save this to your OneDrive, because then you'll have a working copy and whatever changes you make won't be lost. So obviously there's a couple things you can fill out easily at this time. Your name, we'll be going over specific purpose and central idea shortly, so you'll know what to put in there. So this is a working copy. As you move through this, obviously we haven't covered certain things. If you are still narrowing down your topic, you're not going to be able to work on your main points. But you're almost there. You're almost at the point where you can do that. So I would say by this class period, you should start after this class period. You should be able to start filling in some of this information, at least at a preliminary basis. As you scroll down to the end of this document, this is the reference page. You can delete the image that's just for formatting purposes. But if you follow this, you're going to have everything formatted the way that you need it to be. So these are a couple of models, a couple of examples to go by. The other thing is the booklet I gave to you. a couple class periods ago, the APA booklet. We won't work out of that right now because I want to show you an easy way to create a reference list. So for those of you that found your reference, let's say on Films on Demand or EBSCOhost, I'd like you, if you have your computers, to go ahead and pull that up from the library. If you don't have your computers and you brought your reference, you can go ahead and take a look at it and you can follow along because this is all relevant to every single one of you here. In my other class, I have a student that's doing their topic on adoption. So let's say that this is your item, and you have this up right now. How many of you know the easy way of finding the citation on this page? You want to share with us?
Sure, so you scroll down to, here, I'll just look on mine, so I gotta look straight in my eyes. And it's just under Cite. Yep, you click on Cite, and then it'll give you what kind of paper you're gonna have. So if you have like APA or whatever, MLA, you could just literally click on it and it'll pull up exactly your reference exactly the way it should be. Yep.
Okay. So you can see here, in this class, we're using APA. So this is an easy way to create a reference list. If you have less than 10 references, this is an easy way to do it. There are tools out there. Let's say you have a really big paper you're writing and you have 15 references. There's some tools that will generate a reference list for you, but it takes a little more work to set up, and you're welcome to do that, but I don't explain that in class. I just show you the easier way since we're only working with 2 references for this first project. So for this, here's a reference. I'm going to copy and I'm going to do a special paste to show you what this looks like in your reference page. Now this is very user-friendly for PCs. You have to work a little bit more. I know we have one Mac over here. So you have to make a few more changes if you have a Mac. So if you have a PC, this is very relevant to you. So I've copied this. I'm going into this reference list. Let's say that I'm going to add this in here. When I right-click before I paste, I don't just paste it. I'm going to use this second button. And this second button will keep all the formatting intact. So it'll follow what this other formatting is on this page. And that's the trick to make this easy for you. So if you notice, there's certain things that are italicized, and we want to keep that. Okay, if you have a Mac, you can still follow most of the format, but you usually have to change the font a little bit and make sure everything's italicized. So that's an easy trick for you. The other thing that you can do after you have your references is alphabetize them by the author's last name. First author's last name. So obviously, I would need to move these around. I would want to put the A up here, the B there, and then this would be the last reference. Did anybody go on a different site, like for example, Films on Demand? You do? We use the same topic. I'm just pretending that this is mine. Sometimes you have to look for where this citation is. So I see, cite the video here, and that's where I can find, and it's the same thing, the same copy and paste. So if you're using our library, you have this advantage. Okay, how many of you want to finish your reference list right now? That hurt.
Are we doing you?
Two. One of them must be scholarly. A lot of you will have one, too. Okay, does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, what's the difference between a scholarly and just a regular one, I guess?
Scholarly has had some type of review or some vetting in order to get into that arena. So for scholarly, it's written by a scholar. It's somebody that's probably an expert in the field and has done an appropriate amount of research to be able to be accepted into a journal. So when we're looking at EBSCOhost, if you get to a point in your careers where you are published in a scholarly journal, you are really an expert in that field. So that's why we're looking at those high.
So are all of them that EBSCO
I would, you know what, I have to take that, they have a few magazines in there that aren't scholarly. But if it's a journal like then yes, it used to be like that. Okay, any other questions? These are good questions.
I'm sorry, so when you copy, how can I get it to the exact same way?
Like
So,
the barbecue sauce or
it's clear.
I did the junior bacon cheeseburger.
So what is that?
I can do that, yeah. I can do that. I can just.
graduate high school, and then came like 2005.
And those touch points are little
What are you going to
Certain things we make now, like not to get any rifle.
So some topics, like, if we're talking about something that's contemporary, especially when we get to persuasion, we want to keep something that's.
Yeah.
That always helps. Oh, okay, can you download and then it should free that up. So there's some limitation in the online version. Did anybody have problems bringing up the little second paste option? Okay, this will work better if you have it opened up in the desktop app instead of working it on it completely online. That's why you should have this all downloaded. Questions?
No.
Okay. Okay. All right, so I think we made it past this. Now, let's switch gears a little bit, and we're going to talk about organizing information more. Okay, one of the nice things about today is I see some of you changing your themes just a little bit, which is what I fully expect. I fully expect you to start tweaking and changing. You're coming to me, you're asking me questions, you're saying, is it okay if I do this? Still within the same topic, you're not making broad sweeping changes, you're making tweaks as you're narrowing down the topic. So this first reference should help you and should be supportive of one of your categories. Okay, does that feel right to you? Do you feel that coming together? Okay, good. Okay, so that's exactly what should be happening. Next, what we need to do is we need to organize this information in a way that makes sense. So this is a part of outlining, and there's different stages to outlining. This is a preliminary portion of the outline. That's what we're doing here. We're just in the preliminary portions. So what you're doing isn't set in stone. You're not married to this. You're just working through this, and we go back and forth a lot in this process. So now that we have a good idea of what category we're going into, the next thing we need to do is narrow this in a little bit more focused into something to organize this. So this is a part of our informative/persuasive chapter. I have a number of different organizational patterns on the board. This list is not complete, and I'm not going to go over each and every one of them. But they will be related somehow to how you've organized this. So if you can remember what your category is, that can help give you a clue as far as what would be your organizational pattern. So there's several of them, but we're focusing only on informative presentations. So starting with chronological. Chronological is also called time sequence. So your book refers to something called time sequence. That means that you're setting up your organization or your outline, your speech, in a way that you're describing something as it occurs in time. And with time, we only have two options when we're explaining this to other people. We can only move forward in time or backward in time as we explain something. So it's not an option to jump around. So there are certain things that fall into that kind of a category. So when we're looking at things, we may be considering an event or an activity or a process. You may be explaining a condition, a historical view. And if you do that, then your time sequence is your option. So think of a history class. Okay, there's some type of punctuated point. It starts here, it ends here. And then all those dates are sequential. Now there's a lot of other things that can fit into this. I brought up adoption over here, the adoption process. Okay, step 1, step 2. You're not going to be able to jump around in those steps. It has to go in one direction. Okay, for those of you that are in healthcare, the disease process. Okay, you go through this, or maybe getting a cold or the flu. Okay, it starts one way, and I don't care how we try and get around all that other junk. For example, the cough, the dry throat, the headaches. We can't, we have to go through that process from top to bottom. So how many of you see you using this chronological time sequence as part of your outline? Maybe your entire outline, maybe a part of your outline. Okay. Okay, that usually, actually about a third of the class for the first topics use that, a third to a half. Some of you may use that for one of your main points. So you may say, you know, it's a good idea if I give some kind of a historical perspective first before I start talking about this thing. So that's an idea. The next area, the next way to organize your outlines would be what's called spatial. And that's when you're describing something as it occurs in space. And this is can be coupled with chronological too, depending on your topics. So basically what it is there's something that we don't have an idea of what it's about. Maybe it's a classroom. Maybe you want to describe to us, I know this term, I have a lot of students that are in child care education. And so maybe they want to describe how to set up a classroom spatially, okay? And they may go clockwise or counterclockwise. They may describe something, like this class, this is in a non-traditional setup, from inside to out. Okay, so something that could be difficult for us to understand. We could do this with buildings, with monuments, the Eiffel Tower from the bottom to the middle to the top layer. And then, of course, we use this in other types of ways, maps. You could be describing something, an airplane. Anything that's an exploded view uses spatial. So if those of you that like to tinker around with mechanics, that's an idea. And then, of course, if you mix this with chronological, you can help solidify, make things crystal clear. So you can think of it in your everyday lives, like, for example, describing how to get to your house from the college. So you may be telling a new friend here, okay, this is where you go. From the college, you turn here, and then left, and then right, first, second, third, and you're also describing spatial. Okay, how many of you see spatial being used in your? Okay, some of you don't. Some of you might. I can see it possible with some of your topics. Okay, a real common one is the solar system. Described spatially. So who can describe the solar system? From the sun on out, all the planets. We have the sun. What's next? What's that next planet? That really hot red planet?
Mercury.
Okay. Then what?
Venus.
Do you know all of them just like that? You just, okay. All right, what's the third rock? We gotta know this, guys, come on. Oh, yes. After Earth,
Uranus.
Mars.
then,
Jupiter.
okay.
Pluto.
He's just jumping right out there. Okay, so what was next?
Jupiter.
Jupiter, then? Do you know all the planets?
Mars.
Saturn.
We already said Mars.
Oh, okay.
Okay, then Saturn, and we're getting really cold.
Then Uranus.
Then, the one you wanted to say first.
Uranus.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
All right, and then?
Neptune.
Uh-huh.
And
And then the debatable one?
York.
Planet X. Because I know that's the
Pluto.
other one. That's the other one I'm thinking of. Pluto.
Yeah, the debatable. How many of you think Pluto is a planet? I believe it
It's
is.
a planet. It just has a different orbit.
All right, it's a tough one. I grew up actually being taught that Pluto was a planet, and then I had this big controversy over it. It's like, you just can't strip it from its title. Okay, so just consider this. So this is not just actually just for your topics. Consider this in your lives. We're using organizational patterns. They help us communicate more effectively with others. So definitely we want to use this in our presentations, but also when we're describing other things, you may want to think about this just in your everyday lives, how this could be helpful for you. We're using it in school. So when you're learning different things, we're using some type of these patterns through here. So just consider that in your everyday conversations. Now, as we move down this, when we go to cause and effect a lot of times is used for persuasion, but it can be used for informative. So if we go back to this, where would cause and effect be most relevant when we're looking at these categories? Conditions, issues. Okay, so that may be something that you look at as far as a cause and effect. Who's doing Second Amendment here? Who said they were doing?
He's not here.
Okay, that can be something that's a cause and effect, or condition or issue. So that's something that maybe when she comes back, you might want to give her a clue that an organizational pattern could be in line, depending on how she's going to present this. So consider cause and effect, or effect and cause. This could be an explanation. This could also be coupled with chronological, so some type of historical event can bring us to, could be the cause, which brings us to the issue. So there's a lot of creative ways we could put this together. Problem solution, you will be using exclusively for your next topics. Pro-con may be an option for you, especially for informative presentations. If there's a lot of bias with some of your topics, naturally, this can be a nice way to balance it out. So you could do this, let's say, per main point, or one main point and another main point, pro-con. So you could say, this is, let's say, the debates on vaccines. These are the pros, these are the cons. And then, of course, for informative, we're not trying to push people one way or the other. It's like, for example, when a physician says, there's this medication you can take for this medical condition, but there's some disadvantages to taking this medication. I'm going to tell you what you can see the benefit, and also where some of the things that you won't like about this, and you can make a decision if this is best for you. So that would be a balanced way, a neutral way of presenting a pro and a con. And then topical, everything else after this becomes persuasive. Topical is just mixing and matching these together, which I've suggested all along. So you may find yourself just having cause and effect, or you may see yourself using entirely chronological or spatial. Or you can see yourself taking a main point using, let's say, cause and effect, or let's say historical and then cause and effect, as a couple of examples. Okay, does that make sense? At least in theory, because you're going to be applying this later. Okay, how many of you feel like you have enough references to make some decisions as far as narrowing down this topic enough to organizing this information? A couple of you. We're really not there yet, but we're getting there. Okay. Now that we've talked about references, we've touched on references, not that much, and we've talked about using our categories in order to organize our information, we need to switch gears, and I'm going to share with you the specific purpose and central idea. Before we do that, we're going to have an activity.